show up for a large part of it. We are dealing with Talata, who is just for our audience sake, who is a historian, a poet, how do I call it? A chronologer of a sort with a sort of like a mystified manuscript, you know? You don't get the sense that this novel I'm reading is about Zaiwolo. But you somehow managed to keep him going along for a long time. And my question to you is, if because this is part of your opening statement, if the story is about Zaiwolo so much, why do you drag us along so much talking about all the history? And I think this is because it's historical, no? You know, and I think you partly wanted to do that kind of way. But what is your view?
Yes, I wanted to achieve two things with this book. I wanted to really write about the history of scholarship in West Africa, education, because the idea that most people in the West have, you know, that continent, you know, that's how they were referring to Africa in the 19th century. But I wanted to tell my readers, you know, both Africans and whites, that, you know, you had scholars, you had civilized cities in Africa. You know, there is the two white people, the two Dutch men who made the map of Liberia. They were traveling through Liberia and they were meeting cities that had huge walls, impenetrable walls. So you had in the 19th century areas of what is now Liberia, what is now Guinea, Sierra Leone, you know, huge cities. Not small cities as big as cities in Europe now. You know, so we're not living in darkness at all. So this is what I wanted to show first. But I also wanted to show, you know, the uniqueness of Samori Touré. You know, I mean, Sembène Ousmane, when he was asked, this great African filmmaker, he was asked, why do you want to make a movie about Samori Touré? Do you know what he said? He said, because Samori was a leader, an African leader in whom the qualities of 3-4 European or Western leaders converged. Napoleon Bonaparte, who conquered, I mean, half of Europe.
And Samori is a black Napoleon.
Yes, the French, the French were so afraid of Samori Touré when they fought him so many years they couldn't conquer the man, so they called him the Black Napoleon, you know? So they were the one who gave him that name, you know? So Sembène Ousmane said, you know, this is the only African leader in history, you know, who was so formidable, who fought not only the French people. This man did not only fight the French people, he fought the English people too. So this is an African leader that we don't even know about, you know, let me say in the Liberian way, you know, so we didn't even know about this man. But when you say Shaka Zulu, I mean, maybe most of the people, everybody know who Shaka Zulu was, when in fact Shaka Zulu's achievement pale, you know, in comparison to what somebody was able to do. You know, so these are the two things that I wanted to achieve with this book. You know, this is why it is voluminous. I mean, if I didn't follow Zaiwolo, I think the book was going to be smaller. I don't know. I don't know.
Sorry
anyway.
to interrupt quickly. Card number 408918. You are parked in someone's apartment. Please immediately go and then get your car. 408918. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I was going to ask you something else, and he interrupted, but I will switch and then ask you to talk to us a little bit about Samori's empire.
Yes.
In fact, no. Let me change it, because I want to bring forth into the conversation.
Yes.
Can you speak a little bit about the fluidity of the African past? You know. The history, because I'm asking you this because Samori was not only a great emperor, he was also at one point a slave raider. And he did raid places and sold people into slavery. at one point in the novel, you also mentioned this. In fact, when I got it, because I didn't know so much about Samori either, but in the book, then he, after achieving kingdom or empire status, he declares that slavery across the kingdom is abolished.
Yes, yes.
Which pit him against the French and other European slave raiders. So my question is about the fluidity of the stories about our past. It's not this one story, but I want you to talk a little bit about it. Maybe Otnio, you can chip in.
Yes. When I was writing this book, someone told me, depending on where you go to West Africa, you have a different story about Samori Touré. You know, in Ghana, especially in northern Ghana, Samori is well known as a slaver. This is a man who bought, who captured people and enslaved them and sold them to the white people. That's one place. When you go to part of Africa, he was a liberator. You go to Guinea especially, he was a liberator. In Mali, he was a great liberator. Actually, Bamako, he conquered Bamako from the French. You go to Senegal, he's a great liberator. You go to Burkina Faso, he is a great liberator. Part of Liberia, actually, at the end of the novel, to complete the cycle, right? So, I mean, the novel starts with somebody meeting this boy, from his mother's world. And when the white people are chasing him, where is he going? He's not going to Sierra Leone or Mali or Guinea or Burkina Faso. No, he's going to his mother's country. So he's going towards what is now Liberia from Ivory Coast, entering Liberia, when the white people were chasing him. So that's how the novel is complete with somebody's flight, towards Liberia. So it's, he has a complex and very fluid character and history. He's a hero to some people, and he's a villain to some people. I mean, somebody, you mentioned his name. I was telling a lady this book is about somebody. He said, oh, the slaver, which in fact he was. He was. But there was something unique about somebody. In most part of West Africa, except for some people, maybe the Peles and some other group people in Liberia, but you have the caste system, among some people in West Africa. When you mention your name, people could know this is what your people do, So this was happening in many places in Africa, in West Africa. Somebody came from a family of weavers. They make clothes and then they sell it. This is a very simple family. It's very simple life. They were never rich. But he rose up from that humble beginning to become an emperor and one of the greatest empires in the history of Africa. So what does that mean? What did that mean for West Africa? It meant the end of the caste system. Because in the era of Samori, a slave, because he wasn't once a slave, he was actually enslaved. A weaver could rise up to become an emperor. So people were not saying now, because my name is this, then I have to be like this. No. So Samori ended that. So that alone makes him very, very special, despite his history as a slaver.
Now, it's difficult to talk about African history from the 17th century to the early 18th century or mid-18th century without considering the role slavery played. Slavers and anti-slavers were at it. Africans were not feeble, weak people that didn't have ammunition to defend themselves. They had been trading in slaves and goods for about 500 years. So they weren't walking around with machetes and spears as it's depicted. These people had cannons, they had guns, they were all available, those things were available to them. So you couldn't speak of a powerful African leader that was not a slaver. It's impossible to speak of a powerful African leader that wasn't a slaver. It's just as it's impossible to speak of any Western government that developed without slavery. Slavery was an institution across the world. It established itself in the culture. It was a way of living. So when somebody captures slaves from here, raises a town, he sells them, he gets money, he buys ammunition. So it was a means of funding the war. It was so typical in the time. It's like today we all go on Facebook. It was that simple.
Yeah.
So looking at the issue of slavery is an ugly past that we don't like to look at, but that's a reality.
Yes.
It happened across the region.
Yes.
And it strikes me as odd because almost 100 years before Samari was this Abdurrahman Ibrahim from Guinea, who also has a link to Liberia. He was also the son of a great emperor of the Timbo Kingdom. As you said, there were no countries then like that. And Timbo had come from Bama, Mali, coming all the way to Liberia, northern Liberia. And they were based in Guinea. Timbo's still there today. They had gone to a war in northern Mali, and the emperor had captured the place. They learned everything. On his way back, he took a small regiment, and the retreating soldiers captured him. They didn't kill him out of respect and courtesy, knowing what it was, but they sold him into slavery.
Yeah.
And he's called the prince among slaves. And for 60 years, he was in America on a plantation as a slave on a plantation.
Yeah.
Nothing was known about him until coincidentally a doctor who had toured Africa who got sick in his father's kingdom.
Yes.
And was taken to the palace, recognized him and said, no, this is the son of a powerful African king. So the similarity is quite, and we published a book called A Tossed American Pie about that. Why am I saying it's similar? Because both of them come from Liberia. This one is another true story where a Liberian link, so he comes from Guinea mostly, but then when he repatriated, he ended in Liberia. His wife died in Liberia. His wife was the oldest, and he was the oldest recorded male during the first census taken in Liberia in 1847. Now, his wife was the oldest female he was, and after 60 years, the American government bought his freedom and sent him to Liberia, not Guinea, Liberia, where he had to go. So we keep omitting these little things out of the picture when it comes to Liberia, which you were speaking of. But then what I think about this story is the fact that both of these leaders were highly literate. They could read, they could write. In fact, one of the things that distinguished him was he could sit down. He wrote a letter to the emperor of the king of Morocco.
Yes.
At that time, they mistook him to be his father. He wrote in Arabic. That's how literate they are. So we speak of somewhere not being something or Zawulu being able to read. What the leaders did was they took the children, sent them to these schools, and educated them. That was a part of the status they had to be an emperor's son or to be a chief's son. You had to be literate. You needed to know warfare. You needed to know so many different things. So you speak of that culture. You have to understand Africa in that fluidity where it comes in. You couldn't be one thing. You had to be many things. And to be a leader, you had to fight in the ranks with your soldiers to earn their respect. It was not a matter of just being called a king's son. You had to go through the military school. You had to go to the academic section, prove yourself that you could read, you could write, you could be, all of those things, because no one's going to trust you with their lives or their life if you prove to be something. So Zawolo could be all that he could be because he had an example, a long history of excellence. A long history in warfare, a long history of literacy where people were reading. So the culture where Africans didn't know how to read, it's not true. You speak of language. We had languages across the border. The Konuk Federation you talk about, from that federation alone came 3 scripts. Making Liberia the only country in the world that has 5 indigenous scripts, none copying from the other. The only country in the world that developed 5 original syllabic scripts, not even alphabetic scripts. So those of you that don't know, these 5 languages were written down. So we have the Gola. I will leave the Gola out. We have the Mende. We have the Va. The Pele script, which he comes from, and then we had the Basava, and then the Kisi. We don't know much about the Kisi. What we know about the Gola script is that it existed because it was referenced by a few scholars, but we don't know what it is like. Why is this important? it shows the excellence from the area he comes from. Where when the parent wanted to write the script, they didn't look at the vast script. They wrote an entirely different script. No similar characters. Where they were able to break the language down to a syllabic form where each letter, that's the thing, represents a syllable. And they were that literate to break the language down phonetically, grammatically, syntax, all of that into a language and develop that. That can come from a culture that is illiterate.
No.
That can come from a culture that is not. So that narrative, and that's the beautiful thing about what is happening in the last 10 years. More people are doing historical fiction, but they're bringing out the reality that African societies, especially West African societies, was a center. We look at Timbuktu, that's the only one we look at, was a center of excellence. Europeans came down to study what was happening over there. They came down because they knew there were centers of learning existing in West Africa, from Mali to Ghana, you name it. There were always those major centers where people went to learn. And that's a narrative we should be proud of. And in this book, I think you did justice to the fact that not only does it come from Liberia, but it comes from an indigenous, it's indigenous, it's original in its form. And that's...
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Vamba, I think it's... For our audience sake, we need to do some readings.
Oh, really?
Yes, indeed. You are enjoying yourself.
Yes, enjoying yourself. I'm having fun.
We have to do some reading, and but before you do that, because I think we selected some two readings. One is a very short one, and the other a little longer.
So am I going
to
read? Yes.
Say again.
Am I going to read both?
Do you want me to read some of it for you?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I could do
I
the
think
reading.
you should read
All right.
You should read the first one, and then I will read the other one for you. No problem.
All right. I mean,
and before you do, I wanted you to prelude that reading with a description of of Samori's world. You know, already in your conversation, you've mentioned that the empire stretched, I think, from Senegal, Gambia, all the way down to Ghana. And what people don't know is that since it stretched all the way to Ghana, it got close to Kumasi, and that Samori had good contact with the Ghanaian Asante King, Prempeh.
Prempeh the First,
Prempeh the First.
So yes, I will get back to that. But then somebody had conquered areas that is now part of Liberia, Sierra Leone, a huge part of Guinea, Mali, Ivory Coast, Burkina Faso, part of Ghana. So actually, when he was in Ghana, that's how the Asantehene Prempeh the First heard about him, you know, and they began to correspond. And historically, they did not meet, but they were allies. And because I'm a novelist, of course, it's very tempting, you know, to arrange a meeting between the two African rulers, you know. So I created this, you know, somebody was very dark, right? And Prempeh was very, very dark too. So I created a scene where the two meet, you know, somebody, you know, thinks, oh, this young man could have been my son. You know, so in a moment of emotion, he hugged, you know, the boy, which an emperor should never do in the African setting, you know. And people were saying, what is this? What is this man doing, you know? So that's how close the bond between Prempeh the First and Samori Touré. And historically, this is really true. The Prempeh reached out to Samori, and Samori did send some of his generals to what is now Ghana, to Kumasi, to train the soldiers of Prempeh the First. This is historically true. You know, so that's how the connection was between these African rulers, all to get rid of the presence of white people in West Africa, the French and the English, because the Africans realized, rulers, that this is a threat to their very, very existence. You know, so we should do everything possible to push them out of our countries. You know, but tragically...
And Vamba, indeed, when you read the book, there's a part where you talk about there's a dialogue between Zaiwolo and the French soldier that they had captured.
Yes.
And Zaiwolo thought, well, we captured you.
Yes.
We're going to learn about your culture
Yes.
and everything. But during the conversation, Zaiwolo realizes that the French were never going to leave Mali.
No.
And that they
Yes.
thought they were just going to keep
Yes,
trading
yes,
and then
yes.
eventually leave,
Because-
but they were never going to leave.
This is the tragedy of Africa, that you had the people who were determined to fight to preserve their ways of life, to preserve their kingdoms and empires, the Africans. But what the Africans didn't know was that the white people had developed weapons of mass destruction. I mean, Africans didn't know what cannons were. You know, cannons could just, they shoot this thing, it would just destroy this whole place. You know, we didn't know that these things existed. You know, so they had the determination, they had the fortitude, they had everything, you know, to get rid of the blacks, the white people out of their empires. But that was not enough. Courage alone was not enough. So this is what Zaiwolo didn't know while he was talking to this young white man. He didn't know that there were hundreds, if not thousands of cannons that could be used to decimate and destroy the Africans. That's the tragedy, you know.
That since they had seized some of the
Yeah,
cannons,
some of the
they were just going to use it to
Yeah.
kick out the French.
Yeah.
And then he realized, oh, there were more
But
cannons.
you know, just before the seizure of the canal, like what happened, you remember he was almost blinded in that moment. And he figured, look, I need to do what something will say my last strength or so, just to get my hand on those cannons. And it was just the tip of the iceberg. That must have been frustrating.
Yeah.
But give us a taste.
So
I mean, I think
so. This is a scene. This scene has two meanings. You know, the scene showed the relationship Zaiwolo had with his mother. It was a very, very special relationship, and that was to reflect also the special relationship that somebody had with his mother. That's one. And the second one is to show the reputation that somebody had. You know, I was saying, you know, you go to some places, he was a villain, he was a bad, you know, the mean, bad man that we say in Liberia, you know, and in some area he was the hero, you know, the real hero. He finished training, you know, like in the Chinese movie, and he's ready to, you know, to revenge for his mother, all that kind of thing. You see? So, so this is why, so I wanted to touch on those two things, you know. So, this is Zaiwolo here. He has been captured somewhere in the Samorian Empire. So, Zaiwolo woke up to the presence of men around him. They grabbed him, threw a cloth over his head, tied him up, and led him out of the house and into the unknown. The journey lasted for hours. No one spoke, not even when the man built a fire close by and tied him to a tree. "You are a Samorian Sofa," one of them broke the silence and spat in his face. The Sofa, those were the horsemen of Samori Toure. They were very, very famous. I grew up hearing stories of, you know, the horsemen of Samori. They used to compare their presence, I mean, some people in Liberia, to like thunder. You know, the thunder, the presence of horses. You know, there were no horses in Liberia. The forest, you know, the horse could not survive in the forest. So somebody in the savannah, the horse could survive. So the Sofas of Samori, that's how they call them, the horsemen, the Sofa. Sofa is a Mandingo word called the horse father. So this man is saying, "You are a Samorian Sofa." One of them broke the silence and spat in his face. "I'm not," Zaiwolo shouted. The man ignored him. "They say Samori Sofas are invisible. Let's see how you survive this. We should have cut off your head the moment we captured you, like your master Samori did to the people of our village. But first, we'll make you suffer. Yes, you will suffer." "I'm from Misadu, a student of Talata," Zaiwolo said. The men laughed. "Lies, a Sofa's trick," they said. The men gathered around the tree to which Zaiwolo was tied. Zawula closed his eyes. He's talking to his mother now. Mother, his mother has passed on, but he doesn't know this, right? Mother, if you can hear me, don't abandon me. The man began to shake the tree, and he heard a voice. You are not abandoned, namesake of my father. A voice came to him, so faintly that Zawula doubted whether it could be his mother's. So his mother, he didn't know that his mother, when he left Liberia and he went to what is now Guinea, to the savannah, that his mother has passed away. But there was something special happening to him. His mother was always communicating with him in dreams, and sometimes he would hear his mother's voice. This is something that happens in our societies, right? We all know this, that people come to us in our dreams, and sometimes even while we are awake, and tell us and give us messages. So that's the special
Vamba,
kind of relationship.
Nowadays, I'm sorry to inform you, but nowadays the Bluetooth and the Wi-Fi
Oh,
has
really?
cut that
Oh,
connection.
no, I don't believe that.
So you believe we are not getting? We are listening to too many things. Way too many things.
The ancestors are still alive, right?
Yes,
So-
but the Bluetooth is intervening.
It's more
Oh, no,
present.
we're not going to allow that. Yes.
Well, thank you so much for that reading. I think even somewhere in there, what people don't realize is that while he vehemently denied being a Samorian so far, he later on begged
Yes.
to join
Yes.
Samori's army.
Yes. Because he was fascinated and captivated by the war of Samori. Because where he came from, he was being discriminated against. I think many Liberians know that, I mean, we came from a culture that was divided. You have people who had everything, and very few people had everything. The majority didn't have, nothing in Liberia. Actually, part of the reason war came to our country is because of that, the inequality in our country. So he knew that. He has been discriminated against. And then he came into a war of a man who was once enslaved, who was just a weaver. And he said, but this is a fascinating, a beautiful war. I want to be part of this war, in which, my background plays no role. I can rise up in the word of this man, and become a great hero.
And I think that's one of the beautiful things about what slavery did. Now, situate this thing like this. About 100 years before, when the Timbo Kingdom established, they were using horses. Now, imagine 2, 3, or maybe 1,000 houses running at the same time. That sheer force.
Yes.
They tremble, you feel on the ground.
Yes.
The sound, the screams,
Yes.
the war songs,
Yes.
the spear, all of those things fighting the enemies. So African leaders who were great, and this is similar to what happened with Genghis Khan, Xerxes, the Persian Xerxes.
Yes.
He even used elephants. So people use these great animals to, as a symbol.
Yeah.
Being a horseman was a status, was a symbol of
Absolutely.
status.
Yes.
But then a young man was quite impressionable. It was quite impressionable on a young man growing up in a system that valued honor, dignity, hard labor, because you understood you merited that space. You were not favored, like you said.
Yes.
He wanted to be one because this was where I proved myself. It didn't have to do with my background. I could come from anywhere. As long as I merited this, I earned this, I'll be a horseman. That's why they were all respected.
Indeed.
They were all not just feared, but all worshipped, because you went through a rigorous training period. So every young man at that time wanted to be, a sufferer.
Yes.
Because it gave them this prestige. You could get the
Yeah.
women you wanted. You could get honor for your family. You could get all of those beautiful things in life just by being a great warrior.
Indeed.
And dying in war was even better.
Yeah.
Because then you become eulogized as a great hero,
hero.
or so.
Yes.
So it's not far-fetched to see why Zawula would want to enter a world fascinating like that.
Yes. Thank you so much, my brother.
I'd like to open the floor to
Yes.
our audience here. If you have any question to ask Vamba, we can pass the mic around.
Yes.
And then you can...
You can ask me not only about the book.
Yeah, you can just
you
ask...
you ask me anything. Whether I ate tobogi today or why, You know?
Yeah. And I will look for the second reading. I can do that. I think.
Yes.
It's,
there's
three.
three. Wait.
Vamba is fascinated with Tobogi. Interestingly, you know the funny thing is,
I'm missing Tobogila. Nobody.
I got a bad stomach. I can't eat Tobogi. Then the man looked at me this morning and told me, "Mama, you need to eat Tobogi." I'm like, "What am I going to do with Tobogi this morning?" I'm already persuaded I can't eat Tobogi. They come and tell me to eat Tobogi this morning. Vamba will face it Tobogi. Don't worry.
Yeah. All right.
Okay.
I think
Yes.
Vamba
Good
will
evening
do
to everyone.
Yeah.
one for us.
My name is Alex
yeah.
Diosokro.
This question.
Yes.
All I just want to say, or I want to know, who really is Vamba?
You see, that's a very good question. So thank you so much, my brother. Yes, I thank you so much. So I was born in Lofa. I was born in Kolahon. So yes. So I mean, you have, you see, yeah. You see. So anyway. Yeah. So I grew up in Kolahon, and I grew up speaking Bandi, Madingo, Mende, because of where Kolahon was located. We had a market, and people were coming from Sierra Leone, Guinea, and everything. So Kolahon formed me, and really, because of the interaction I had with all different kind of people, I learned to appreciate differences, between people. So my father was a great scholar. And so I grew up having the opportunity to read books. I was reading, books. My brother owned series of Heinemann African writer series. So I read Chino Achebe from very young. I read the folk tales of Winter Sankawolo. No one knows when he will die. I marry one and want or something like that. So I was reading all of that. I mean, all those books, and I had the fortune. I was lucky before he passed on to meet Sankawolo himself. So even the name Zawolo, that's where I came to know the name. So he told me, oh, why don't you give that name to a character? He even told me that the name Wulo, his name was also called Sankawolo. So in Pele, it means the small person, the small Sanka, So he told me, all right, when you call this boy Zawolo, so this is how you spell it. So this is why I dedicated the book. He was one of the people I dedicated the book to. So he meant a lot because they were the one who opened the way for us. Sankawolo, Baitimo, all those others. So they were the unsung heroes. People who we grew up reading their books. Sankawolo, when I met him, he had been writing books that, because he was a Liberian writer, and most of the Western publishers were not interested in Liberian literature. So he had a pile of manuscripts, in his office. He was telling me, in his house, he was telling me, Vamba, look at this. I'm writing all these good books, and the people don't want to publish it. So this is why I appreciate my brother. For those of you who don't know, my brother Othniel is a publisher. So any one of you dreaming of writing a book, you don't even need to go to Europe or to go to America. He's in Liberia, so he publishes books, Yeah. So you can always call him. Yes. So thank you so much, my brother. So, yeah.
You answered the main question. You just told where you were born.
But he answered it. He said, "Who is Vamba?"
All right. So wait now. I didn't finish the question. Anyway, I'm going to cut it short. So my brother got a job. My big brother, he got a job. We are talking about African family now. So he got a job in Kuwait. So he decided, all right, I was the youngest in the family. I was young when my father passed away. So he decided to help me. So that's how I ended up in Kuwait. So I ended up in Kuwait. I was there when the war came. The Sintan War broke out in Liberia. The same war also in another war in Kuwait. So I couldn't go back to Liberia. We ended up in Holland. So that's how I ended up in Holland. So I went there as a refugee. So I went to school there. I'm a lawyer by training. But I don't do it. I have, nothing, So it was at the refugee camp that I started writing books. So any one of you dreaming to become a writer, don't listen to anybody tell you that, oh, their writing business is too hard, oh, I mean, you can't make it or something like that. The people were telling me, refugees like me, they were telling me, oh, you ever see a black person writing book in Holland? You know? So I'm telling you. So, I mean, it's like I'm in a bro now. You see? So, but I didn't listen to people, and I continued writing. And so my book came out. It became a bestseller in Holland. I mean, everybody, all of a sudden.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
We have a question.
Yeah.
I want to say thank you to you, and we are very proud that we have our own librarians in our presence today.
Yeah.
And being able to publish books. But my question here is, Mr. Vamba,
Yeah.
today back home in Liberia, we face a lot of difficulty when it comes to reading and writing in Liberia, most especially after the war in Liberia. So, what would be your advice or contribution to the generation that are coming up today, before and after the war?
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Thank you. So, I've been, a lot of librarians, young librarians, have been reaching out to me. Some of them, I've been not only encouraging them to be writers, but some of them I've been helping them financially, and, encouraging them. Some of them write poems, and then they send it to me, even sometimes manuscripts. And so it's my dream to really, because I've reached a point in my life, because I've been writing all those books, and so I mean, only white people are reading these books. My own people for whom I wrote these books are not reading my books.
In fact, you wrote this book in
Dutch.
Dutch.
Can you imagine? I'm talking about a pellet bottle or white person. I mean, what kind of problem there? What kind of trouble? So, so I should be. It's my plan. From this state of my life to be going back, regularly to Liberia, and then trying to encourage our young people, because they need inspiration. Because if some young people who see me, there is someone here, a Liberian girl, who heard about me. She saw me on BBC television. She said, oh, we have a Liberian. She didn't know that there was a successful Liberian writer. So she reached out to me, and she's really talented. So I hope with some encouragement, writing you have to do it yourself. But if I can be able to encourage her and encourage others to do better, I'll be, then my life has been, fulfilled, my dream. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Vamba, I want people to buy the book. So,
yes. So the book is here,
Yeah, it's here. So
yes.
I want you to read just a small part so that we can wrap up this evening's conversation. It gives people more flavor of what they are missing if they don't pick up the book.
Thank you. So I'm going to read the first encounter between the black people of somebody's soldiers, somebody's sofas with the white people. The first time, there's a story that the first time South Africans saw white people, they thought they were spirits. Because in our culture, the spirit is white, right? So they thought they were spirits. So the first time when they saw the white people, they couldn't believe, how is that possible? What are they doing here? So Zawule could see the men in the camp polishing their weapons. Some were drilling and others singing in a language as strange as their appearance. Their carefree laughter was borne by the wings towards the sofas. One of them, who Zawule would later learn, was the French General Gustave Bonnet Debord, was sitting under a tree away from the rest. He was tall with a mustache, and his sun-scorched face was as red as the earth around him. Bonnet Debord paused from his task and stared in Zawule's direction, aware of his presence. Tell me what you see, son, Kamabrama said. The Sofa general had come along despite his injured leg. Whenever he was tired of moving with crutches, the Sofas, the horsemen, would carry him on a wooden stretcher. I think they are settling down, Zawolo said. This is the right moment then. Without leaving his seated position, Kema Brahma, that's his Samari's young brother, gave the order to attack. No one under any circumstances is to deviate from our plan of action, he said. Remember, don't fight the white people in large numbers, but in pockets. Thank you. Yes.
Thank you very much.
You need a strategy to beat these people, right?
Yeah, indeed, because then he goes on to talk about why that was very important to fight them in different.
Yes.
But what I took from that, you know,
yes,
besides the combat tactics, was that this same tactics has been used against Africans for a very long time.
yes,
Yeah. So if in this time such a general knew this kind of tactics, why have we allowed ourselves to be pitted against each other? So that for me, that was what stuck out.
Because we as a people, we don't want to teach our stories. Those schools existed to teach the history, the collective history that was brought down. So the generals that went there learned strategies. That's why you talk about certain tribes could not conquer the others, because the same strategy they used before, they taught it down, they passed it along. Our younger generation is barely hearing about the old stories. We're reading more Western stories, we're watching more Western movies, and then that has become our culture. So we have now become the ones that our own strategies are being used on. The French did that in Guinea, they did it in Ivory Coast. To conquer our leaders, they used the same divide and rule, they used the same things that were used against them 100 years ago when they were defeated, when they started to come into Africa in slavery. The Portuguese did the same, the Germans did the same, every colonizer did the same. Congo, we see the same thing happening. And until we can learn and respect the fact that we have to go back to our histories, we have to go back to our cultures, we have to go back from nationhood all the way upwards and learn these things, we cannot fight what you don't know. So we keep blaming people and wanting something to change, but we aren't going to change it because the strategy that is being used came from our playbook. So now we are the...
indeed.
Thank you so much. Vamba, I want you to close this session for us. Tell us why we should pick this book.
Because this book is a celebration of the resilience of African people, the African spirit, that we fought, that we did not only just allow white people to come and take over our lands, that the story is an example and a source of inspiration for us to say, all right, that we had heroes, you know, heroes who fought to preserve our dignity. So, yes, and also to celebrate our oneness, you know, because in this book, a lot of places that sometimes, you know, when people come from different places, oh, this person is speaking a different language, so I'm not related to him. Somebody celebrated his mother, who was from the forest, you know, and people elsewhere looked down on people from the forest, but he took someone from his mother's word and uplifted him and made him one of his people, you know. So this is what I wanted to celebrate. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think you've been a wonderful audience. Thank you, Othniel, for joining the conversation, and to you, Vamba, for coming all the way to share this with us at Peja Festival.
Thank you.
The books are available at the stands there.
I'll be there to sign.
Vamba will be there to sign the book, so you can just go there and get the books.
And also for my Liberian,
270.
yes, my Liberian
290.
brothers and sisters, I think there are some drinks. My sister, Asatu Jalo,
who arranged that. Yes,
so
indeed.
you can follow us. We're gonna, you know, go over there, and I'll be signing books, and while you're having some drinks and some snacks.
Thank you so much. Before we leave, I'd like to just quickly announce that coming up on stage here is the session Inspiration, Perspiration, 3 Poets who are discussing their works. And these readings includes discussions readings by Nia Yukwe Parks, Asabire Mitch, Dagogo Hart. Also going on at the inner courtyard at the same time will be I See the Blue. It's an immersive performance by drama queens. If you are here and you are not 18, please do not go there. And then the listening session in Cone continues for audio drama listening session. They Have Drowned Our Land. And finally, online going on is the Ewe Book of the Year by Kojo Ayeke. It's at Hamburg upstairs in there. Thank you and have a wonderful evening. In fact, I'm missing one. There's one session going on in Berlin by Pelu Awofeso. It's moderated by Aziz Ayata. You should also not miss that. And so please enjoy your evening. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah? Yes. Yes. So let me